Hi, everyone.
Let me see if you can get me. How I'm at.
Yeah, you're here. You're here. Excellent.
Can you see me and hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
Let me see if I can. Oh, hold on a second. Here we go. Okay.
There
Better.
you go. All
Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Eric.
Hello. Hello. So it's only 7:29. I couldn't get in. It wouldn't let me get in without the senior chat being over. So I don't know.
All
I
right.
don't know.
Hello. The senior chat is over. Are we good?
Yeah, thanks. I just got in. So I don't know why. I've never had that before where it won't let me in with something else. So I don't know if it's because we were both logging in or what, but
That probably is because we were going through the Homestead site.
yeah.
It was nice. We had a great senior chat of about 28 attendees.
Awesome.
Some really good information, questions and answers and stuff like that. So yeah, and I encourage them all to join us here and let the party continue.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm gonna give it another minute and I'm gonna close the door here so my family doesn't bug me.
Do you guys have all of your PTO meetings virtually still, or do you typically meet in person now?
Well, you know what? We get better attendance via Zoom at night. Pre-COVID, the meetings were in person in one of the rooms at Homestead and in the mornings. So it really eliminated a lot of people who worked. And then if you're busy, you didn't feel like making it there. And then during COVID, we had a lot more attendance with Zoom.
Yeah.
And by moving it tonight, people can still kind of go about what they need to be doing in their home at night and listen in and then ask questions if they need to. So for what we can see for the foreseeable future, we'll probably keep it via Zoom just because we get better attendance.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because you do miss that, the personal connection and the chit chats and the socialization and stuff, but
Yeah.
at least this way we can reach more people with information.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, I've been, doing presentations again, and but they've all been in person. So
Mhm.
being back online, doing it virtually, it's kind of takes you back to a bad time.
Trauma, the
Yeah, I was
trauma
gonna
of
say-
it all.
Yeah, maybe a little, maybe like moderate, hopefully mild, not moderate PTSD. But
Yes.
appreciate the opportunity to talk to parents, so it's good.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, why don't we go ahead and get started just so we can respect everyone's time. I'm quickly going to share the agenda for tonight, go through it quickly. Obviously, Dr. Mazius is the big thing. But we'll go through the student report. Actually, I don't know if it's Alex or if it's Grayson. I was taking a guess, or maybe it's neither. I saw Ms. Blahnik was on the phone, Mr. Ebert, and then, we'll hand things to Dr. Mazius, who's gonna walk us through his presentation, give us some opportunities to ask some questions and have him solve all our kids' problems, which will be great.
That would be nice. But,
and then we'll
calibrate our expectations here.
we'll go through the rest of our normal meeting, but let's get going with the meat of it so that let's just get going. So is one of the students on this point?
I do not
see them.
I do not see either Alex or Grayson.
Okay, that's fine. So Melissa, I'll hand it to you then, and if they hop on, we can always go back to them.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Looks like we have a full house tonight. Thanks for joining us. I know that our students may not be here, it looks like, but if they were here, I'm sure after spring break, one of the first things they were looking forward to was prom. I did not attend, but I know many students did, and a lot of teachers attended as well to supervise and help organize everything. And I know that they had a really great time, and they are very grateful to the PTSOs contribution for everything. So thank you so much for that. I also know that students are busy in their spring sports and clubs. And then there's a play this weekend, I believe, as well, that students are preparing for. And then both students and teachers have been busy testing and preparing for tests as of late. So many AP boost sessions are going on and taking some practice tests. Furthermore, we had some testing for students this week for freshmen tested earlier. And then today we had pre-ACT for sophomores, and they actually have the forward test tomorrow. So a lot of testing, using those brain power these days. They're also, we're going to be preparing for conferences coming up next week, Thursday. I can't believe it's our last conference. And then the following week, I believe we will also start AP tests the first week of May. And then as a reminder, if there's any questions that come up from students or parents about sort of the logistics of everything, Jackie Connolly is our new AP test coordinator that's been with us this year. And she's been really great about getting back to students and parents if you had any questions. I'm sure I missed something, but those were kind of the big ticket items from the last couple of weeks and what's going to be coming.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Yes, I know my children both went to prom and they had a great time. Well, yeah, whatever, whatever they were willing to say, which is not much, but they were like, yeah, it was fun. So let me hand it over to Eric to give the principal's report.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, Dr. Mazius, for joining us tonight to talk about an important topic. Really appreciate you being on the call. You've certainly drawn a crowd, so that's fantastic. I think there's a lot of people who want to hear what you have to say this evening, and we appreciate you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We just finished day 28 of third trimester, right? And simply put, I can't believe we're nearing the back half of the last trimester of the school year. It seems like it's gone by pretty quickly. It has been a solid year, though, so far, and we're looking for a good 30 days to wrap things up. Melissa covered a lot of stuff when it comes to the academic calendar in the next few weeks. You should have received a couple of emails from me in the last week, one today and one last week regarding parent-teacher conferences. In the one I noted today, any sophomore parent certainly can participate in our 6:30 to 7:15 in-person sophomore parent update, where the counselors will talk through academic and career planning things, potential future college visits, ACT prep, Naviance, and other things that kids can be doing moving into junior year, rising to junior year. So if you're a sophomore parent, I would recommend that you plan around that particular update and come to that meeting. And by plan around, I mean, schedule those parent-teacher conferences at times outside of 6:30, 7:15, if you're able to do so. If not, Chris Bessler will certainly record the event and we'll get something out onto the counseling page for people who aren't able to attend in person that night. Spring brings lots of different events and milestones. It's really a fantastic time of year, albeit busy. Melissa's correct. We just went through testing pre-ACT. That's the new test I've talked about on here before. For freshmen, they finished up Tuesday. It's nice. They had one day, not two. Sophomores made it through their day today, and we have to finish up with sophomore forward testing tomorrow, but it's just one short chunk of time during second hour. So looking forward to putting all that stuff behind us. It sends people in a little bit of a tizzy during the day when we've got testing, but we'll be done with that real quick. Of course, that leads to AP testing. Melissa mentioned already, May 1st to the 12th. You've been getting information from Jackie Conley, from teachers as well. We're looking forward to having those things up and running 2 Mondays from now. A big spring milestone, of course, is the prom. We had 510 tickets sold. You may know that. We worked really hard to get everyone who wanted to go the chance to go. I have to again shout out Mrs. Pfaff and Mrs. Ackman, even on her maternity leave, Mrs. Ackman, along with Mrs. Kress and Mrs. Aros in the office. They all did an amazing job getting things together. I simply get to go along for the ride and enjoy the event. So Really a top-notch event. There were just a few issues with our online GoFan ticketing setup, but overall it was a really smooth process that we'll continue to refine and get better at for the future. I can't say enough about the beautiful venue, Discovery World. The weather was gorgeous. Maybe you were down there for picture taking and throughout the evening, and seeing kids all dressed up and having a great time, smiles all over the place, really is a highlight of the year for me. I love it. It was fantastic this past weekend. I will say I thought it was extra special this year, seeing families with their students and their groups getting pictures taken in and around Discovery World prior to the event, something that we really haven't done before. And that's that opportunity for a parent to experience a little bit of the venue with their child. I thought that was really cool. It was a really neat 5:30 to 6 before we got going.
It's like a heat map of dog shit. It's like such a great fertilizer. Wherever it was, you see like a little sprout of grass.
Yeah.
And so like you'll see like little spots.
Hey,
of it,
Julie
like,
Smallwood,
little
can you
dots
mute?
Sorry about that.
All good,
Okay.
all good, Julie. The spring play is this weekend. It's Antigone. Should be a good one. Please come out and support if you're available Friday through Sunday. Should be really good. Other big events moving forward here. The Merit Award ceremony is coming in a few weeks, May 15th. Looking forward to that. I mentioned Mr. Millard. Last time we were together is one of our retiring teachers. He will speak at that event. So if your student is receiving a Merit Award, I do recommend coming to that event that night. He's a special human being and he'll have some good thoughts to share with all of our Merit Award recipients. So Mr. Millard on Monday night, May 15th. Friday, May 26th, I know I talked about this earlier, was listed as a flex day on the calendar for this school year. That will be a school day for students at the high school. I don't believe it will be. I'm almost certain it won't be a school day for K-8. I would imagine there will be a district communication coming out soon regarding that day, but it will be a regular school day for our students. Once we passed the threshold of instructional minutes with our 2 snow days, that became a day for us. Why it's not for K-8, you might remember one of those days that was a snow day for Homestead was a non-student day at the K-8 level. So again, May 26th, Friday, May 26th will be a day. Graduation is nearing. We just heard a little bit about the senior chat. It is the biggest event of the year. Senior parents will get information from me and Mrs. Kress next week. We're looking forward to everything that goes into this and to the end of the year in general for seniors, including the senior dinner on Sunday, June 4th. Always a great event to see those people who came in as freshmen and leave truly as young adults ready to take on the world. That senior dinner is a fantastic event along with graduation. Just a couple of really good weeks at the end of or at the beginning of June. I'm working with members of the PTSO to get a class of 2023 Leave a Legacy campaign underway. We've agreed on asking for support for an outdoor seating and eating area for students during lunches. Okay. Of course, this can be used for classes at different times as well. I think we'll call that space Cafe 23 in honor of the class of 23. And it'll be a nice tribute to this group of seniors and their families. Of course, without the help from the classes of 2021 that donated to the outdoor classroom space and 2022 that has helped support the upcoming garage door installation in the cafe, I should say from the cafeteria to the courtyard, this wouldn't be possible. So combine the newest Leave a Legacy with the other projects, as well as the work of our beautification committee, who has been in and out of the courtyard for some time and is ready to get things going. We're really going to have a nice spot in that courtyard area for students and faculty and staff to utilize in spring, summer, and fall. So I need to shout out and thank all members of the PTSO who've helped along the way with those projects. That's what I have. Certainly, I can stick around for questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, we can turn over to Dr. Mazius.
I just want to say that, so I was down at Discovery World taking some pictures, and some of the seniors were wearing tuxedos and or suits that were unbelievably disgustingly ugly, and it made me laugh out loud. So it seemed like they were having a lot of fun. A couple of the kids from the basketball team especially, we were like, where did you even, like, who would even make a suit like that you could buy? So
The
was fun.
seniors every year seem to go above and beyond. And Julie, your boys are seniors next year, so we'll see what.
Yeah, we'll see
happens.
what happens. Although I can't imagine Tim doing something like that, but Brian will. So
Right,
anyway,
right.
it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely hilarious. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Ebert. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ebert before we turn
Just
things?
a quick question. Do you know when the garage doors will be going in?
Early summer.
Thank you.
We tried during spring break and it just didn't work out. And we just can't do it while we got students in the building.
No worries. That'll be a nice addition.
Yeah. Neat.
Am I on mute?
Not
Or can you hear
anymore.
me? Okay. It's Nicole Hartman here. I am in the lobby of the theater right now, trying to decorate. And I don't know, Mr. Ebert, I think it's the athletic tables, but I just want to put it, I have been meaning to talk to somebody. The kids must have sat on 2 of the folding tables. So they're one you can't fold, one almost folds all the way. But I'm not sure, where do I go to, how do I share this with somebody that can do something about it or needs to know?
You just shared it, so I will. I'll try to take care of something tomorrow morning. Do you need those moved now?
Say it again?
Do those need to be moved this evening?
No, they don't need to be moved right now. One is against the wall by the bathrooms.
Yeah.
And one is, well, I don't know if you can, I'm not sure what you can see. I'm just on my phone, but one of them is on the, I can put them aside and put a note on them so that they know which ones. Clearly
good.
the one.
I can run down there early in the morning and talk with our B&G department, get them switched out as needed. Thank you, though.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
I don't know if I'd have been in
Thanks.
that spot.
Appreciate it.
All right, Nicole, way to solve problems in a minute.
Yep.
Okay, so I am going to now hand things over to Dr. Mazius, who obviously is our guest speaker and is going to spend some time with us. And thank you so much for your time and for spending it with us. And I'll give it over to you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you all for having me come tonight and talk about, sort of like listening to all of this. There's all of this positive, uplifting news, and of course, in our Bethlehem Thiensville school district community and the Homestead community, it's hard to believe that we're in the sort of like back end of April and the school year will be over soon. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't say I can remember my senior prom and showing up in my horrendous looking yellow tuxedo, which I still feel embarrassed about. But anyway, sort of casting that all aside. Plus, I also have to say, it's 7:40. Thank you for coming. It's late. Mr. Ebert still has his tie on. That's very impressive. So not to sort of bring the conversation down, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk about something that is, still very much, unfortunately, in vogue these days among our adolescents and even ourselves, and that is the prevalence of anxiety and emotionality and depression. And what I'd like to do tonight, and since it's late, I'll try to talk for about half an hour, 35 minutes, and then open it up to questions. And I hope that that some of you who are here listening, will have some feedback from me, some feedback in terms of what I'm saying, whether what I'm saying and trying to teach sounds practical and relevant, and even more importantly, I want to hear that. I want to hear about that, obviously, but I also want to know if there are any questions, any situations that people feel like sharing that we can talk about, and hopefully I can be of help and use to people on this call. So I guess, where do I start? We're kind of on the back end of COVID. Thankfully, we've all been through COVID, and it's been obviously really hard. And I was saying, when I would speak to groups pre-COVID, my sense was that mental health was on the rise, and psychopathology or anxiety disorders, mood disorders was kind of on the downstroke. And what I've learned during COVID is that I was sadly wrong, and that if you look at the numbers, if you look at the data, mental health wasn't necessarily as in growth mode as I thought. Although I'm not sure I believe the data, but what the data also show is that during COVID and even today, our kids and really all of us are really struggling with our mental health. We're struggling with anxiety. And I'm going to talk tonight about why perhaps that might be, even though I don't have any hard, fast data to support it. But I'm going to tell you what my sense of it is and what the data seem to be pointing towards. And even more importantly, I'm going to bring to you all what I think is pretty cutting edge, recent, evidence-based research, which gives us some practical ways in which we can work with our kids and ourselves to bolster our mental health and get this mental health crisis, if you will, under control. And hopefully what I'll be talking about are things that you're already doing or can easily do, again, with your kiddos and with yourselves to put us all in a better state of mental health. So I'm going to start with something that something I learned back in my graduate school days, back in really kind of the early 1980s. And I'm bringing this to the fore because it was relevant then and it's relevant today, even though I would say that, psychology has evolved in important ways. But back then, when I was studying psychopathology or mental health or mental illness, the ABCs of it really consisted of A, affect, B, behavior, and C, cognition. A, affect is emotionality. B, behavior speaks for itself, and cognition is just a fancy word for thinking. And I would argue that throughout the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and even today, 2023, unfortunately, what got sort of ignored or minimized was the influence of cognition or thinking. And neuroscience has really kind of helped us figure out how to bring cognition back into the mix in an effort to help ourselves cope with everyday stresses and strains. And so that's what I'm going to really be talking about. There's also a new book out. It's a book by a psychologist and academic. His name is Dr. Ethan Kross. It's been out a couple of years. The book is called Chatter. And I love the book because it gives us a language for a technology, if you will, that, again, we can use with ourselves and teach our kids to help us kind of deal with the negative chatter that exists in our brains, giving rise to mental disorders like anxiety. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So think ABC, affect or emotion, B, behavior, and C, cognition. And tonight we're going to really kind of look at how to bring cognition back to the fore, because cognition backseat to emotionality and behavior. So I also want to kind of define anxiety, so we're all kind of on the same page. And when I talk about it, you'll kind of know what I'm thinking about, what I'm talking about. So anxiety is on the rise, and anxiety actually is different from fear. Fear is a normal, healthy, emotional, mental or cognitive and behavioral reaction, which we all need to rely on in order to keep us safe, in order to keep the species alive, reproducing. So fear is actually a good thing for us to experience. It all kind of comes at birth. And again, it's our ally, it's our friend. But when fear gets out of control, that's when we become anxious and are at risk of developing an anxiety disorder. So to give more of a sense of what anxiety is, I'm also going to talk about a guy. His name is David Barlow. He's a psychologist. He's sort of kind of the pioneer in the area of anxiety. And he many years ago defined anxiety as a reaction that is bigger than expected. It's kind of an emotional, cognitive, and behavioral reaction that is bigger than expected. And just as a brief aside, all of our kids, when they're in elementary school, our teachers do an amazing job of talking to our kids really early on, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, to kind of help them recognize how big their reaction is to some environmental event or environmental stressor. And that's sort of a key component in anxiety, or in the theory of anxiety. When we're anxious, our reactions are bigger than expected to environmental events. They're long lasting. They don't come, activate us, enable us to put out the fire, if you will, and then go. Anxiety is a big reaction that lasts. It may feel like it grows smaller, but it's always there, so it's longer lasting. It's driven by irrational thinking, which we may or may not be aware of. Oftentimes we are aware that our thinking and our behavior is irrational, but we can't seem to do anything about it. And then finally, the way in which we respond isn't necessarily effective. It may feel like we're being effective in the short run, but the truth is we're really not dousing the flames. Maybe we're making them feel, or we're making ourselves feel as if the heat isn't as hot, but the embers are still there. They don't go away, and the cycle then continues. So that really is what anxiety is. It's a bigger than expected reaction emotionally, mentally, and behaviorally. It lingers on, it lasts, it causes ruminative thinking. It's driven by irrationality. And the way in which we respond doesn't really make the problem go away. It keeps coming back. So that's what anxiety is. And that, interestingly, is what many of us and many of our kids have in their lives, in our lives, and it's our job, obviously, to help our kids figure out how to manage their anxiety. It's important for us to learn how to manage our own anxiety, so that the anxiety gets replaced by adaptive fear, which comes and goes. So hopefully that's clear. Actually, does anybody have any questions about that before I move on? I want to make sure we're all sort of on the same page. We have a good working definition for anxiety. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to take your silence as meaning we're on the same page. Good. So that's anxiety. Okay. Let me sort of like pivot to a little neuroscience, and then I'm going to talk about how to bring cognition into the mix. So whenever I talk, I always like to talk about brain and the brain and brain development. And so we all know that our brains are amazing organs, super complicated, comprised of billions of neurons, all of which are sort of integrated in unique ways. And because of the ways in which they're integrated, we are who we are. You know, we think in unique ways, we feel in unique ways, and we operate, we act in unique ways. Although frankly, our brains are sort of like really across all of us more similar than different, but we each have unique thumbprints, we each have unique fingerprints, but our brains really operate according to the same principles. And so I'm going to talk tonight just very briefly about two parts of the brain, our limbic system and our prefrontal cortex. So our limbic system, two almond-like structures that exist behind our eyes and a little further down in our brains. And our prefrontal cortex, which is what we need in order to regulate our anxiety, that's right behind our forehead, last part of our brain to develop. Interestingly, many of you already know this, you've heard this multiple times. Your prefrontal cortex fully ripens at around the age of 25, let's say +5. Our adolescents, our pre-adolescents are far away from that, but that doesn't mean that their prefrontal cortex isn't amazing and wiring and already fairly well developed. So whenever we experience an event that makes us fearful, it's our limbic system, not our prefrontal cortex, that lights up. It's even more specifically our amygdala and our hippocampus, which light up. The hippocampus helps us remember what it is we're reacting to. And the amygdala activates in a way that gets ourselves focused, really focused. I'm going to use these words, zooming in on whatever it is that we are afraid of. And once our amygdala lights up, our peripheral nervous system, sort of like around the neck and then down, activates, and our organ systems, our different organ systems are turned on. We breathe more rapidly. Our eyes open up more fully. We become more sensorially sensitive, if you will, and we become capable of either fighting, fleeing, or freezing in an effort to extinguish whatever it is we're afraid of. So that's how all of us operate in the face of something that frightens us. That's how we operate. That's how our children operate. That's how our adolescents operate. So that's what's sort of happening when we become afraid. The critical piece of anxiety is that activation doesn't start and stop. It starts, our brain gets active, our body gets active, and we do something, but whatever we do doesn't necessarily put out the flame. It may feel like what we're doing puts out the flame, but it doesn't. And so that flame remains alive. And I would argue these days that flame is too alive in many of us, including, or maybe especially, our adolescents. You know, Mr. Ebert was talking about ACT testing, pre-ACT testing, colleges, even prom. I mean, all of that excites our kids in ways that can be positive and in ways that can be negative. And the other thing I just want to mention about anxiety is that when anxiety is here and active and in go mode, ultimately what happens, if it lasts too long, it begins to affect our different organ systems, causing problems like migraines, gastrointestinal issues, sleep issues, all kinds of problems. So what I want to focus on is how we bring the C back into our lives and how we get the C into our kids' lives, cognition, in an effort to help them manage their emotionality. And this is where the book Chatter really comes in, really interesting research. And so this is sort of the secret. This is what we kind of need to do. This is what we need to teach. And it's actually going to sound very simple, but it isn't. Because interestingly, the ways in which our brains are wired make this challenging rather than simple. But I'm not using the word impossible. I'm using the word challenging, which actually is a good word for all of us to grapple with. And so this is what we want to teach. When we become worried, when our kids become worried, the brain automatically, our limbic system automatically zooms in on what we're feeling. And that's perhaps a good thing. But at the same time, interestingly, when our limbic system kind of zooms in on what we're feeling, our prefrontal cortex, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, which is right behind our forehead, which is the last part of our brain to develop, which is the part of the brain we need to problem solve and see ourselves and regulate our emotionality, that part of the brain, curiously and interestingly, shuts down. It goes offline when our limbic system gets activated. And so one of the first things we have to teach our kids to do, one of the first things we have to learn to do is to become self-aware of our emotionality. We need to become, and we need to teach our kids to become self-aware of their emotionality. And that, it kind of happens, but it happens in the blink of an eye. And then our amygdala or our limbic system can hijack us. So we have to teach our kids to recognize that they're feeling something that isn't very comfortable. And when we do just that very thing, we actually help our kids activate. And when we do that very thing for ourselves, we activate our prefrontal cortex. We turn our prefrontal cortex on, which is precisely what our kids need to do and we need to do when they begin to feel fear, worry, when their anxiety kicks back in. It's a very difficult thing to train our kids to do and to train ourselves to do. After we do that, the second step is we have to teach our kids, and our kids have heard this a zillion times, and again, they've heard this starting in elementary school, if not sooner. They've heard it from us when we've talked to our kids about what to do when they're emotional. But we need to remind our kids that they need to breathe. They need to breathe, and they need to breathe deeply. And actually, they need to exhale more than they need to inhale, but they don't have to be super talented in terms of doing breath work. They just need to remember to A, notice what they're feeling, and then B, breathe. Breathe in, breathe out, actually breathe out longer, exhale longer than they're breathing in if they can remember, but it doesn't really matter. They just need to do that, because when they do that, when we do that, we reflexively activate our parasympathetic nervous system. When our limbic system is activated, our sympathetic nervous system is turned on. I was talking before about the peripheral nervous system, not to get too far into the weeds, but when our limbic system is activated, our sympathetic nervous system gets turned on. And when we breathe, our parasympathetic nervous system gets turned on. And that in and of itself calms down our limbic system, further opening our prefrontal cortex. And when our prefrontal cortex is open, wow, that's when we can do the things. That's when our kids can do the things that they need to do in order to regulate their emotionality. If that doesn't happen, then they cannot regulate their emotionality. And that's when their emotionality lingers. And that's when their brain begins to do things that are deleterious for different organ systems. Okay, so when their prefrontal cortex is open, when our prefrontal cortex is open, what do we need to do? We need to teach our kids to do 4 things. 4 things. In addition to just being self-aware of their emotionality or their emotions, we need to get them to do 4 things. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how, but I just want to share with you what those 4 things are.
Wait a second.
So first thing, Lisa, if you can mute, that would be, sorry, that would be great. Thank you. So, okay, so the first thing we need to get them to do, we need to get them to ask themselves, is what I'm feeling normal? Because our kids, generally speaking, do not ask themselves that important question. We tend not to ask ourselves that important question either. And I don't necessarily know that I love the word normal, but we need to teach them to ask themselves, okay, is what I'm feeling right now, which may be worry, panic, anger, insecurity, is what I'm feeling right now normal? That's number 1. Number 2, if my friend felt the way I do about whatever it is I'm worried about, anxious about, freaking out about, sad about, worried about. If my friend was feeling what I'm feeling, what would I tell him or her to do? If I played mini therapist, if I was a consultant, and our kids, we know this, they have lots of opinions and they think they know everything and they know a lot. But when we tell them to think about being the consultant or being the therapist, I find oftentimes our kids are pretty brilliant about figuring out how to extinguish the fire or at least dampen it down meaningfully. And then we need to tell them that they need to take that advice and apply it to their own lives. So that's 2. 3, we need to ask them to think about the question, okay, how emotional or how important is this situation going to be in your life a month from now, 2 months from now, a year from now? Our kids do not think like that. We oftentimes don't either. And then 4th and finally, we need to ask our kids to think about whatever it is they're facing as a challenge as opposed to a source of worry. So these are the four questions our kids need to grapple with after they've been breathing for a while and find themselves in a more relaxed state. This is how you bring the C word, cognition, back into the mix in order to help our kids learn how to regulate their emotionality. So again, what am I feeling? How normal is this? What would I tell my friend if my friend brought this to my doorstep? How important is this really going to feel a year from now, a month from now, 2 months from now? And how can I view this as a challenge as opposed to a source of concern? Okay, just a couple more points and then I will pipe down and give you an opportunity to tell me what you think about this and to share your own situations if you'd like. We have to teach this to our kids. Our kids are not necessarily, some of our kids came into the world, I would argue, with sort of this expertise. Most of them did not. Most of us did not. For many of us, this is not our nature. For many of our kids, this is not our nature. We need to teach this, but we need to make sure that we teach this when our kids want to hear this. So we need to make sure they're calm and we're calm when we have this conversation. So we probably won't want to have it, in the heat of the moment. We might want to remind them calmly to pay attention to to think about what they're feeling and to take a break and to breathe. But we don't want to get into this other stuff unless they're in a place in which they can talk about it and think about it. Secondly, one of the errors many of us make, including myself, many times, and one of the errors our kids make when they're playing therapist to their friends is we spend too much time empathizing. It's very important that we empathize, that we help our kids zoom in on what they're feeling so they can know what they're feeling and put a label on it. But we have to make sure that we only spend so much time zooming in. We have to make sure that we spend more time zooming out. When our kids talk to their friends, since their friends don't really know what to do, they spend too much time zooming in and they exacerbate the emotionality. But when we zoom out and we help our kids zoom out and we bring cognition into the mix and we ask the questions and we get them thinking, that's when we get them into their right part of their mind, the helpful part of their mind, their prefrontal cortex. So we need to do that a heck of a lot more with our kids, and we need to train our kids to do that a heck of a lot more with themselves and even with their friends. It's very important. finally, the conditions for this to be ripe not only, include picking the right moment, but we have to make sure that our kids, and it's easy for me to say this, so many of our kids and so many of us don't do this enough. We have to make sure that our kids get an adequate amount of sleep. We have to make sure that our kids are eating healthfully, having breakfast in the morning. We need to make sure that our kids are exercising, and many of our kids are exercising adequately. We need to make sure, and I didn't even get into this tonight, this is another conversation for another night. We need to make sure that we are, to the best of our ability, setting some limits on our kids' screen time. I should have said this at the very beginning, but if we want to kind of figure out why anxiety is on the rise, I mean, there are lots of obvious reasons. The culture, the world as it is right now, certainly is not one that promotes calm. I mean, when I was younger, for sure. I mean, so I would participate in tornado drills, and that was worrisome enough. But now our kids have to deal with active shooting drills, and that is not something that many of them take lightly or even play down or forget about, regardless of what they say. And what I hear from kids over and over and over again, and that's why, even though you see this in the literature, but I think this is so true. I think one of the primary reasons why our kids are so anxious is because they spend way too much time on social media. Way too much time scrolling through TikTok and Instagram. Just like many of us probably spend too much time scrolling on Facebook. So all of this, is creating conditions under which, or within which, our kids are ripe for becoming anxious. So we want to make sure that we're trying to, as best we can, manage their screen time as well. And then two last things that have come into the research lately that I think are really helpful to kids in helping them in order for their brains to be fertile enough to kind of really use their prefrontal cortex, zooming in, zooming out, bringing C back into their lives in order to manage their emotionality and their anxiety. We need to help our kids remember all that they're grateful for, because gratitude plays a significant role in keeping kids grounded and happy. And then even something as sort of like simple but profound as just making them aware of the reasons for all of us, for them to have a sense of awe in their lives. And all of that is really important, and it goes a long way towards helping them learn how to manage anxiety. So I just want to summarize with the following. Anxiety is up, sadly. And, for those of you who know Bob Dylan, the times, they are not a-changing. I don't want to sound negative or cynical or pessimistic, but so much of why our kids are anxious, it's not going away anytime soon. I believe it will go away. Things will get better, but it's not going away anytime soon. So our kids really need to have this technology, this mental technology. And B, the body is our guide. The body, it always has told us what to do. The body tells us what to do. We just need to learn how to create healthy reflexes. And that's where you guys come in. That's where we come in. We need to teach our kids how to zoom in so they become self-aware of what they're feeling. And then we need to teach them to zoom out, or to gain some distance, and to use their amazing cognitive equipment to manage their emotionality, using those excellent questions that we and our kids, unfortunately, don't grow enough. Practice makes perfect. I don't like that word perfect, but practice makes perfect. The brain is neuroplastic. And whatever we practice, or whenever we practice, whatever we practice, we're literally changing the architecture of our brain. And by learning to zoom in and zoom out, we're making our brain stronger, hardier, more resilient. And even though the prefrontal cortex fully ripens at 25, if you do this sort of stuff with your child and with yourself, you will create healthy architecture. You'll help your child create healthy architecture in his or her brain. The time to do it is now. It's never too late to begin this process. And when you do it, be committed to it, even if it doesn't create what seems like observable, meaningful change in the short run. This kind of process, I fully believe, will create meaningful change. It's just going to take time. All right, so I'm done. It's 8:20, not bad. You guys, please kind of weigh in. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to get your feedback. I'd like questions if what I've said is not so clear. And if anybody wants to just kind of raise something happening in these times that we can reflect on and respond to, that'd be great. So I know it's late, but please share with me, because this is usually the most meaningful part, the best part, the most helpful part of the presentation.
There is, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was definitely a lot of information, and I do have some questions, but I want to allow other people to ask. There's a question in the to me in the chat. When would you recommend professional intervention regarding anxiety?
Okay, it's a great question. So, if your child, if your adolescent, if your young adult, if he or she seems to be unable to, perform activities of daily living, your child is unable to sort of answer the bell, show up to school, be productive most of the time, socialize comfortably most of the time. If these are things that you find, that your child just cannot do, then, and if you find that it's sort of so far gone, for lack of a better way of putting it, but if your child is really struggling so mightily that what I'm suggesting you do seems late rather than timely, then that would be, I think, an important time to consult with a mental health professional, whether it's someone with a licensed professional counselor, an LPC, an LCSW, a PhD, like I have. That these are the people that you want to kind of reach out to for starters. Typically, pediatricians these days, recommend to parents that they start with a psychotherapist as opposed to starting with a medical provider who's probably going to talk about medication. But that's sort of like the barometer. You want to ask yourself, how unable is my child at kind of answering the daily bell? If on the other hand, your child is grappling with anxiety, grappling with fear, and it's sometimes getting the better of him or her, which is normal, that's when you want to introduce the kind of skills or practices that I'm bringing to the fore tonight. But if it feels like, your child is farther along on that psychopathological spectrum, on the anxiety disorder spectrum, then you want to consult with a mental health professional.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? And if you're not comfortable asking a question to the group, feel free to message myself or Julie privately, and we can voice the question for you.
Yeah, please use the chat if that works better.
Yeah, I do have a question. You're talking about the deep breaths and helping to relax the lobe cortex. Is that correct?
Well, right. When you breathe in and out, 3 or 4 or 5 times, then you relax the limbic system and you open up the prefrontal cortex.
So
Yeah.
what do you do when you have these teenagers who I just feel like it's not necessarily one specific event that might get them to feel anxious, but you feel like it's a daily, they're going through their daily life in a heightened state of like wiredness and anxiety, but they might not even realize that they're anxious to even say breathe. Do you know what I mean? Or they might say, I'm not anxious, I'm angry, which I feel like sometimes anxiety shows it's
Right.
in irritability and anger. So if you don't get them, and then you have all your, how do you even get them to take the deep breaths and recognize that they are living in a constant state of anxiety that they might not even realize because they could have been that way for a few years now, and that's just life.
Yeah. So that's good. So a couple things. First of all, it's interesting. I just want to say, I hear this over and over again from kids, and I hear this from adults as well. And that is, breathing is fine and dandy, but it's not enough. It doesn't solve the problem. And so they aren't necessarily sold on the breathing, on the breath work or the breathing practice. So that's one thing. Secondly, I'm talking about training. It's called self-awareness training. And again, it's important that we talk to our kids. And again, when you do this, you may get some eye rolling. If you ask at the wrong time, you're certainly not going to get much of a conversation going. And by wrong, I mean, they're just not in the mood to talk, they're tired. Talking about, their emotions is the last thing they want to do. They have a lot to do and they just want to chill. But talking to your kids about the importance of even randomly tuning in and asking yourself the question, how am I really feeling right now? What is my body telling me about my emotionality? I mean, that may sound hokey, this is Wisconsin, so I can use the word cheesy, but it's a really important mental health practice. And the more often you do it, the more often you're reminded to do it, the more often we talk to our kids about how we do it, the better we and they get at it. And when you just develop that practice of intermittently, randomly tuning into just the way in which you feel, the better you get at knowing what you're really feeling. And it can be angry, it can be worry, it can be insecurity, it can be happiness, it can be joy. But we just don't think about doing that enough. And as a consequence, we don't talk to our kids enough about it. And as a consequence, our kids, generally speaking, are not very good at being very self-aware. This is not a public service announcement for psychotherapy, but one of the goals of psychotherapy is teaching somebody how to become more in touch with him or her self. And so it's just very important that we introduce that concept into our kids' lives and that we do it ourselves as well. So that's really step one. Once you've got that going, whoa, it's a lot easier to remember to breathe and to begin to believe in the importance of breath work. And then you move into what is called cognitive restructuring, or doing that cognitive work and getting yourself to just think about these important questions that can make one highly adept at managing one's emotions. So this is a process and it requires work, but it also requires just introducing our kids to it and being believers in it and being good at it, so then we can get better at teaching it as well. It's a lot of psychology, but it's very important, and it's really cutting edge science right now that I just hope that all of us will embrace, particularly not in particular, all of us, but especially our kids.
Thank you.
They're the ones who are
I have a-
really right now, and the culture is not helping them. The social media culture, I don't want to sound like a dinosaur, but the social media culture is not helping them right now. And they're really in the thick of it.
Julie, you had a question?
I do, but Nicole, were you gonna jump in?
Well, yeah, I'm cutting in and out, so if it doesn't work out, sorry. Dr. Mazius, what I'm hearing too is a child who has ADHD, for example, this process of teaching them these things is going to be that much more difficult because of the attention piece. Is there anything beyond what you're telling us we can do for that? Because it's pretty intense. And these are all strategies we've been working on along with many others.
Yeah. So let me say this, attention deficit disorder, having struggling to attend in a sustained way to some event that isn't all that interesting or exciting, which is really what attention deficit disorder is, along with perhaps other challenges like having a difficult time thinking before you act and thus responding impulsively, and or having a lot of energy and being unable to just sort of slow oneself down. All of that makes up for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Not to get too into the weeds, I do want to say, the neuroscience has taught us that kids with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or kids with attention deficit disorder, they're already dealing with a lesser than expected or lesser than developed. Let me see how to put this. Their prefrontal cortex is not as developed as it necessarily should be, given their gender, chronological age, and cognitive abilities. So if you have an attention deficit disorder, you're already struggling with a prefrontal cortex that is not necessarily your friend when you need it to be. So a couple of thoughts. This is going to sound ideal, but I want to say this nonetheless. If we can turn our child with an attention deficit disorder or adolescent onto the importance of this and make him or her interested in developing this, that will help the process grow on its own. So that's one. Two, and I say this with reticence because I'm not really, a medication guy. First of all, it's not my training, but secondly, I believe in the importance of using psychostimulant medication or anti-anxiety medication, SSRIs, if and only if it on its face is necessary, because without it, child is really responding in a way that is debilitating. He or she can't sort of answer the bell, rise to the challenge, and it's not his or her fault, if you will. But psychostimulants are designed to help the prefrontal cortex work in a more normal or neurotypical way. So psychostimulants actually can help our kids or help ourselves can utilize these practices, the self-awareness training and the cognitive restructuring that I'm talking about. So psychostimulants actually can help kids with ADHD engage in these processes in ways that will help bolster their mental health and regulate their emotionality. That's a long-winded answer, Nicole, but I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
Good.
So
thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I was just going to say, so you were talking about zooming in and zooming out, and so saying that, and I assume when you say zooming out, you're kind of trying to help them put in context, a couple of months from now, is this going to? So I have one child who that helps with two of them, but the one is well, it's all well and good that you're telling me that, in the grand scheme of life, where does this fit in? But if I'm thinking about college and this important decision, it is a pretty big deal. And so, I am stressed about it. Yeah. And I don't know how you telling me, when I'm your age, it won't, it's not going to matter as much. That's a far way away, Mom. I'm dealing with this right now. And you telling me that I should take a look at the bigger picture isn't helping.
And so I love the way you put it, because I want to be clear. If that's what I'm saying, it's more nuanced. It's for sure we can tell our kids, you know, it's important to zoom out. And when you zoom out, these are the 4 questions you want to ask yourselves. But I didn't do a good enough job of making, of clarifying the way in which you want to do it. Rather than telling them what to think, I mean, we can tell them what we do if we find it works. But rather than telling them what to think, we want to ask them questions that we want to teach them to ask themselves. So you can say, you know, I want you to think about, like I'll think about, or like in a year from now, like how much is this really going to affect you? And like, you know, when it comes to college, yeah, making the decision, it is important. So if there's some stress associated with it, that's okay. That's adaptive. Remember, fear is adaptive. That's an adaptive response. But I would like you to say to your child, if your child is open to talking to you at the moment, I'd like you to really kind of think about, I'd like you to ask yourself, you know, what am I thinking? Or if my friend came to me with this, like, what would I tell him or her? Or, you know, I'd really like you to ask yourself, I really want you to think about this question, you know, like 6 months from now, will I be feeling like I'm feeling today? Or how do I like turn this into a challenge so that I'm not just stressed about it? Like, you want to ask your child, you want to encourage your child to ask him or herself these questions. And so you're not necessarily going to get the answer to those questions at the moment you're having the discussion. Your goal is to try to sell them on the importance of asking themselves the question, and to think about those questions, and to kind of look for truth as things come to mind when they find themselves feeling anxious. That's the process. You know, and that's not a process I find that most of our kids actually engage in. They just like run away with the way in which they're feeling. They're too zoomed in.
Mhm.
So we want to turn them onto the process of zooming out, and we want to give them food for thought. And then, you know, we can leave them hanging, you know, before, you know, just after we tell them how much confidence we have in them and how hopeful we are that they will get better at developing this skill. And we want to tell them, we're not just saying this because we're their parent and we're supposed to feel this and say this, but because we have actual data, which leads us to this conclusion. So that's the process. That's what we want to do. Easier said than done. Lots of trial and error in the process. But what's most important is that we engage in the process, especially when they're still under our roof. Okay,
Mhm.
good. Good. Anything, you know, anything else? I know it's, you know, it's 8:37, it's late, but anything else? It's not like, you know, speak now or forever hold your peace. But I just, anything else on your minds? I'm just curious. Anything else that's really top of mind, come to mind?
Sharon, I had seen you had a hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered if you could comment on the whole sort of attachment to cell phones, or, you know, I noticed that the kids in high school, but also I know kids in their 20s and early 30s, and they just have to have a laptop open or a phone, or looking at a phone or something. And I mean, it, even if like we don't like it because that's not familiar to us, like that's like their normal. And I don't know where we go from there, because that's, I mean, it's like trying to get them to stop is really difficult, you know.
Yeah, scary normal. Yes, scary normal. So let me say, so a couple things. So first of all, you know, it's interesting. so what is obsessive compulsive disorder? So, and that's not my area of expertise, but I know, that we get anxious, we do something that we think will relieve our anxiety. And we also think that if we don't do whatever it is we think we need to do, our anxiety will persist. So we engage in some act, I don't know, sort of like maybe irrational act. And for a moment, we feel better. So like the placebo effect. So I would argue for many of us, our kids, ourselves, for whatever reason, we think, whether we know it or not, that, just one more moment on the computer, one more TikTok video, one more Instagram picture, one more Facebook post, like one more thing is going to make us feel better. It's almost like screen use has turned all of us into obsessive compulsive individuals. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding, but that's sort of an extreme. I'm not talking about stopping. Like that's a formula for failure. I'm not talking about stopping. I'm talking about getting good at noticing, what the screen is doing to you emotionally, like getting good at that, like paying attention to that, and not just zooming in on the screen, but like zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out, and like knowing where we're at. And then once that happens, then we're capable of exercising, and I don't love this word, but then we're capable of exercising control. Then we're capable of turning it off, powering it down, establishing a deadline. All of which, it's just kind of interesting too, just having a sense of time comes from your prefrontal cortex. So if you're not aware of what you're feeling while you're in the moment, you're going to have a heck of a difficult time regulating what you're doing. So yeah, Sharon, it's this is not just something that is affecting our teens, it's affecting our 20-year-olds, our 30-year-olds. It's interesting. Have a conversation with a 60-year-old, a 70-year-old who is into technology. I mean, it's interesting. You go out to dinner, you go out to lunch. I'll do this with people who are in their 70s. I'm not 70 yet, but you go out and they're like, they whip out their phone, and it's unbelievable. So it's not just, our 30-year-olds, it's everybody. So, but this is something, if we work on this with our kids, wow, I believe that when they go off to college or finish high school, do whatever they do, they're in their 20s, their 30s, they're going to be a lot better with technology. That's why I really have hope. I actually think that the 30-year-old, the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, the 40-year-olds, they're going to turn this whole thing around. But it's our job when they're younger to kind of give them skills, so when they leave the home, they're better equipped to deal with the world as it is.
So I'll just jump in and give my, not that I think this solves all the problems, but for a few years now, we started to get really pissed off when we'd go out to dinner and our kids would get their phones out and be on their phones the whole time. So we started bringing a deck of cards and we started teaching them different card games. And so now when we go out to dinner as a family, the 5 of us, phones away, cards out. And so it sounds kind of dumb, but like, that is their expectation when we all go out to dinner, that they are not playing on their phones. And then, yeah, we can talk a little while we're playing cards, but it just, I don't know, it just gives them something else to do versus worrying about their phones.
It's a great idea. I actually thought what you were going to say, and I'm glad you didn't say this, what I thought you were going to say is that earlier on, we were complaining to them. We were telling them, put your phone away, turn off your phone. If you don't put it away, I'm taking it away. And then I ended up caving, and now when we're out, like we're all off our phone. So that's really good. You're on the right track now. So I know. I don't want to keep you guys long. It's 8:40. I appreciate everybody showing up and listening. I've had a lot to say, and I hope that this process makes sense and is something you feel motivated to try and to do. And most importantly, to stick with, because again, the brain is neuroplastic. It benefits from practice. Our kids are not always seeking our advice or our opinions or our conversation. They don't always want to play cards with us, but I do find that they are listening more than they let on. And I also believe that if you implement this and you do this and you do that, you see this as a challenge and you do it with energy and patience and love, it will definitely make a difference. And the beauty is it not only will make a difference in their lives, but it will make a difference in your life too. So you guys, PTSO, thank you for inviting me in. I appreciate it. I hope this was useful. Hope you have a great night, and I hope you have a great rest of the school year. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mazius. We definitely appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Yes, thank you very much. We did record this and I had some people reach out to me that weren't able to make it on Zoom, but will want to watch the recording. So I do appreciate that, and we will be sure to share it with other parents who could benefit as well.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, you all. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so with that, we're gonna just keep going, get through the rest of our stuff as quickly as we can. So I'm just gonna turn it over to Becky for the approval of the March minutes.
Okay, I move to approve the March minutes. Do I have a second or
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Yeah,
Aye.
anyone opposed? Okay, great. Jamie on? I know she was on.
Yep, she's
I'm
right there.
here.
Okay. Do you want to do a quick treasurer's report?
Sure. March 1st, we had a bank balance of $55,170.50. We did not take in any revenue during the month. We had 3 withdrawals, one for $2,000 for a deposit for courtyard plants, for planting around the outdoor classrooms. We paid MTSD for mini grants for a total of $3,768.15. And that was a partial payment. We have another one that went out during April. And then $54 for staff appreciation, which left us with a bank balance of $49,348.35 at the end of March.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
And Grayson, I'm sorry, I should have turned it over to you after Dr. Mazius. I saw that you came on. So do you have a report for us?
Yeah, I do apologize. I did come to the meeting a little late, so hopefully I didn't miss too much. But yeah, I would just like to speak on behalf of Student Council. So prom was definitely an amazing turnout. It was a huge success. I know my fellow classmates and we definitely had lots of fun. Discovery World, I think, was a really great venue. We all loved it. I loved that little courtyard area right outside the venue where parents, could stop in and take pictures. I thought that was really convenient for everyone. I think students and staff loved the aquarium. That was a great photo op for sure. But yeah, overall, I think Discovery World was an awesome venue. So thank you so much for all your help in putting that together. We really appreciate it. So yeah, senior prom was definitely a success. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for hopping on, and it's always good to hear. Yeah, I was saying before, but both my boys went, and it seemed like they were as good of a time as they'll tell me they had. They said they did. Teresa, I don't know if there's anything from area council that you have to report.
You'll have to forgive me, but my mind is kind of blank right now, and I can't think of anything pressing off the top of my head. If I think of something, I will definitely share even at the next meeting. I think the big thing is that for Homestead, the May 25th Friday is a school day.
Right. Okay. So just from my end, I don't have much of a report either, but I did want to, as far as we did, and I see that she's on, Trudy Konopka, I hope that's how you say your name, Trudy, has agreed to be one of the co-vice presidents. And so we are still, I think, we are still looking for another one to help her. So if anyone's interested, please do let us know. And then I see that Linda Walsh is on, but I wanted to put in a quick reminder. If you're a sophomore family and you haven't donated yet for the conference dinner, if you could donate by Monday, the 24th, that would be great. I don't know where we are in terms of where we, meeting what we'd like to be at, but I'm sure more money is always better. So
I think we're about $300 short.
okay, so yeah, that's we're close. So then
What's
I
our
know
goal for that? How much is our goal? Sorry. For the money.
Goal is 1,500.
Oh, okay. So it's not terrible then, but yeah, okay.
Nicole, I actually have you down next if you want to give a Voices report.
Just a quick one. So we had a social at Remington's and I had one parent show up. So we had a really nice one-on-one. I brought all my binders of information along and shared some resources and we just had a good conversation. And I think it's hard, especially with parents that are working with kids that have special needs or different abilities for the evenings. It's going to be hit or miss every time. I got a couple people that replied and said, oh, my husband's out of town. So, and then so there's, have to stay home and be parent. But it was good. So we'll keep doing it. Our next and last outing or engagement is going to be on Monday, May 15th. And that's to Possibility Playground. So those are always easier because parents can bring their kids.
Yeah.
We all can just all get together and we had a really good turnout last year. So we're looking forward to that one. And hopefully the weather will be nice. It's going to be from 5:30 to 7. And Port Washington is where the playground is located. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Nicole, I just have a quick thought for Nicole. What if, like, when you have a meeting or something like you were just talking about, would it be possible to maybe contact Best Buddies, the organization, and see if some of the student volunteers would not be willing to host like a 1 to 2 hour kind of babysitting spot
That's a really good idea.
somewhere to provide, just care so the parents could kind of meet, talk in person, and then the Best Buddy students can provide games or something for some of the kids.
I really like your idea. I will
There you go.
absolutely look into that.
It's a lot of money to think of those ideas.
Yeah, fantastic.
Way to go, Teresa.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. Becky, do you have a boosters update? I know there's like a pancake breakfast coming up, but other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, I was unable to make the last meeting, so I don't know. Julie's still on the call if she was in attendance. But yes, the biggest thing is the pancake breakfast is April 30th. It's been in the booster blast and the short kilts. So please sign up, show up, have some pancakes, honor our student athletes. I know that we're getting.
It's $8 if you buy a head, $10 at the door, and I think there's an award
Yep.
thing at 10, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's about all I have. We're getting close. The deadline has passed for the scholarships, so those will be obviously awarded closer to the end of the school year.
And then, so from an MTEF perspective, Danny couldn't make it tonight, but she said, just the biggest thing is that they have their derby coming up on May 6th. Then registration's a little light right now. So she wanted me to just encourage everyone to sign up. It's a fun event. Obviously raises money for MTEF, which then goes directly to the school. So if you're not doing anything on May 6th, now you are. So that takes us through the rest of the agenda. I don't know if anyone has anything else as far as old or new business. Speak now if you have anything. If not, our next meeting is Thursday, May 18th at 7:30, virtually again, and we'll be presenting our the officers for next year, the slate of officers. So that's all I have, unless anyone else has anything that they want to jump in and add.
I just want to thank Becky has stepped up to help with the senior awards dinner.
Oh, right, yeah, I did see those emails.
The
Thank you.
junior parents
I
kind
think I
of.
kind of backed myself into that, but
Thank
you
you for handling that.
I will help you, because I'm a junior parent too, and I will get my kids.
Bring sweet treats and water, and after the award ceremony, the parents stand around and eat. And I appreciate you guys helping out with that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll definitely help, Becky.
Yeah, I apologize. I thank you so much for taking
Oh,
that
okay.
on. And if you need direction or if you need, anything that way, I just cannot be there that day. So I feel bad.
No, that's totally fine. That's not a staff appreciation kind of thing. It's for the kids. And I was actually surprised. I didn't know the PTSO did it. So
Yeah, I didn't either, but yeah, Becky, I'm very happy to help. I put it on my calendar already, and my kids are both in National Honor Society and need hours, so we will
That's
make
true.
them help us.
And I also want to thank Lee. I talked with Christina Rader, who is in charge of grad readings, and she said Lee really did a heck of a lot of work with MTK, and the grad readings are up and running.
Yeah.
And Christina
I've
said,
seen a ton of people sharing it on social media.
yeah, Christina said she'll wait and see how they're printed and handed out. And if all goes smoothly, she is willing to do it for the next 2 years.
Wow.
Ooh,
That is a good catch there. Thanks to Connie.
Definitely. Awesome. All right. Well, if that's it, then I'm going to adjourn. Thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully see you on the 18th of May 18th, the next meeting.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.